Is this the future design of Balboa Park? City Council meeting right now to hear public comments about a proposed makeover. It's a plan that's drawn a lot of criticisms from some preservationists, even from a mayoral candidate. Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the latest on the debate in council chambers.
And I'm Peggy Pico. Our story about a YMCA women's-only swim class in City Heights sparks a debate about gender, religion, immigrants, and health. A conversation about that story and more coming up on tonight's Roundtable.
And several dozen Olympic athletes from San Diego are headed to London. We'll show you how the training center in the South Bay helped them on their quest for Olympic gold. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. San Diego City Council is in its fourth hour of public comments on a proposed makeover for Balboa Park. The plan, backed by Mayor Jerry Sanders, would take cars out of the heart of the park. It includes a bypass bridge to be built off the Cabrillo Bridge, and it calls for an underground paid parking garage. Project supporters say it will create new parks, plazas, and promenades out of what are now roads and parking lots. The National Park Service says the plan could ruin Balboa's historic nature, and San Diego's independent budget analyst has questioned the financing plan. Earlier today, supporters and opponents of the project rallied outside the city administration building.
Save our park! Save our park! Save our park! I'm just shocked by the irony that to celebrate the centennial of Balboa Park, we're about to institute a project that will destroy some of the very features that make Balboa Park eligible to be a National Historic Monument. Every single historic preservation organization in the nation has come out against this project. The State Historic Preservation Officer, the San Diego's own Historic Resources Board. But besides the historic preservation issues, the paid parking is a giant issue.
I'm here representing 26 of the cultural institutions in Balboa Park. And we see the visitor experience every day, and they're dodging cars. They don't know where to park. It's not a good visitor experience on the west end of the park. And this is a parking garage with a park on top of it that will allow visitors to have a definite place to go to park, and the rest of the parking in the park remains free. Like 90% of the parking in Balboa Park remains free.
If they don't make the money, they got two choices. They got to get money from the general fund, or think about paid parking around everything.
KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr joins us now. She's been monitoring this public hearing. She's in the news center. Katie, bring us up to date.
Well, Dwayne, as you mentioned, we are in the fourth hour of public testimony over this meeting. Both sides are very passionate. Some believe that this is an opportunity San Diego can just not pass up, while others say the bypass bridge and the parking garage would just ruin Balboa Park. We have clips now from Qualcomm founder Dr. Irwin Jacobs, who is backing the plan, and also from Bruce Coons with the Save Our Heritage organization, which is leading the opposition to it.
I ask for your support today for the Plaza de Panama project, not simply because we have resources or because the centennial is almost upon us, but because it is a well-designed project that successfully balances the needs of the many users of Balboa Park. It will provide a truly wonderful park experience for years to come.
A lot of bad things have happened to the park, right? We strangled her with freeways, we've covered her with landfills, we put a naval hospital in there, we destroyed most of her monuments and buildings. There are no original buildings from 1915 around the Plaza de Panama or the Esplanade. We've done a lot of bad things to this thing. This is the final desecration, and I use the word desecration not lightly. This is an extreme desecration of our greatest legacy, and it's up to you to make the decision today.
Now, Dwayne, public testimony should be finished within the hour. Then the City Council will discuss the issue and take a vote later tonight.
KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr, we will be checking back with you later as testimony is wrapping up. We also want to note Erwin Jacob is a financial supporter of KPBS. Other news tonight, a judge says Governor Jerry Brown's tax measure can get top billing on the November ballot. Backers of a competing measure claim theirs should be first because they turned their signatures in earlier. The judge says the election officials didn't break any rules. Democratic lawmakers passed a bill moving bond measures and constitutional amendments to the top of the ballot. Brown's initiative includes changes to the Constitution. A government agency is proposing some new, simpler forms to help home buyers understand what a mortgage really costs. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau designed a 3-page form to replace the many pages buyers usually receive when they take out a loan. The proposed change is part of the 2010 Financial Overhaul Law. San Diego has a major problem with misusing prescription drugs. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says a new report card shows overdose deaths and abuse are growing rapidly.
The county's first prescription drug abuse report card offers an in-depth look at the problem, and it's not a pretty picture. Between 2007 and 2011, prescription drug abuse-related crimes, deaths, and treatment admissions were up. Painkillers like OxyContin and morphine were the most abused medications. Last year, 267 San Diegans died from an accidental overdose. Deputy Chief Medical Examiner Jonathan Lucas says most of the deaths were among people ages 40 to 60.
But we still have kids in the younger age groups using these medications, and we are seeing deaths. Of course, they're healthier, so we see fewer numbers.
The report card shows nearly 1 in 5 ninth graders has taken prescription drugs to get high.
It tells us that it's all over the schools, that it's normal among youth within our community, that they're not seeing the danger of using pills, and that they're available.
County officials say parents should make sure they safeguard their medications and get rid of any unused pills. Law enforcement has made cracking down on prescription drug abuse a major priority, but the DEA's Bill Sherman says they can't arrest their way out of it.
We can go out and we can arrest the dealers, we can arrest the users, but as long as there's still a market for it, people are still going to abuse it and they're going to die from it. So what we got to do is we got to address all facets. It's got to be a multifaceted approach to the problem.
Now, the county says abuse of the anti-anxiety drug Xanax has risen sharply in the last year. What started out as a human interest story about a women's only class for Muslim swimmers provoked a passionate debate on our website. Peggy Pico joins us at the roundtable with more on the issue of immigration and gender.
Our story about the Copley YMCA in City Heights offering an after-hour swim class to accommodate Muslim women unleashed a heated web debate about equality, assimilation, and accommodation. Joining me to shed some light on the topic is Dr. Edina Benitsky, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the University of San Diego. And Dr. Benitsky, thanks for being here. But before we get started, I want to recap the part of this original story that we aired. The Copley YMCA in City Heights offers a women's-only swim lessons after normal business hours. The lessons were requested by a group of East African women whose religious and cultural beliefs do not permit swimming with men. They join the gym to be able to swim and exercise comfortably. Sahara Abdi is with the organization City Heights Hope.
And they are hopeful because, we are part of the society, so if we don't have access to the services that other people have, it's kind of making us isolated. So we're trying to break any barrier that we have. So our daughters, who are as American as anybody else, will be able to swim or do whatever they want to do. So there's no limitation at all in the future.
So thank you again for being here. My first question for you is, the women there are talking about the hope of the future, but what traditionally and historically prevents Muslim women, let's say, from taking a co-ed swim class or belonging to a co-ed gym?
Sure. Well, there are within Islam doctrines about modesty. These both apply to both men and women, but I think this really gets away from the issue. Yes, it is an issue of inclusion and diversity, but it's also really an issue of public health. We want to get these women moving.
Absolutely, and some of the discussion in the original story was about that they were didn't feel comfortable, weren't able to exercise, didn't like walking in parks because there were dogs there. They were afraid of that. What sort of impact would a class like this have on that population, their health, and also their social well-being?
Huge, I would say. We already know that the East African community has high rates of hypertension and diabetes, and studies have shown that communities that come together, particularly ethnic minority communities, my own research among the Arab American population has shown that either it can have a negative effect, reinforcing bad health behaviors, or in this context, I applaud these women for taking their health into their own hands and working out together.
They did. They absolutely reached out. I want to just for a moment take a look at what Leticia Leos of the Copley Family YMCA said. Now, they defended the swim class in their statement to KPBS. They said the swim program is designed to allow women in our community, in our City Heights community, to have the opportunity to get in the water with their children, learn to swim, and stay active in an environment they find comfortable in. The program takes place outside of the normal Copley Family YMCA business hours and therefore does not exclude the public because nobody else would be using the facility at the time it takes place. At the Y, we believe it's our social responsibility to give back and support our neighbors. Now, that's the Y's take on it, but the barrage of basically comments on our website did the range of this is discrimination against men, this is, you know, basically this became a real social issue. So I guess the first question I want to ask you about that is, why is it so touchy? Is it because these are Muslim women? Is it because they're women? What in the greater social context, why is this a touchy issue?
I would say it's because they're Muslim women. I mean, unfortunately, in our society, we talk the talk of embracing diversity, but we like restaurants and the arts, but when it comes to actually practicing diversity, we don't do a very good job. And so I think if this was a Christian women's all swim hour, we wouldn't have issues. And so absolutely.
Some people would argue, aside from the religious issues, that this is an assimilation issue, that this is slowing down the assimilation of new immigrants, first-generation immigrants, into the country. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, America prides itself on being a country where everybody can feel comfortable. People don't need to change their religion and culture in order to be an American. And if anything, it's a wonderful story of these immigrants going to the Young Men's Christian Association. I mean, is there anything more American than that? And taking their health into their own hands and going to a community center. So I think they're being wonderful role models for their children, their mothers, taking care of their own bodies. This is something that we should be promoting.
All right, an American story. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
About 90 of the athletes headed to London for the Summer Olympics got their training in San Diego. The Olympic Training Center opened 17 years ago in San Diego's second largest city, Chula Vista. It's 1 mile north of the Mexican border and a 20-minute drive south from downtown. Golf carts are the main mode of transportation at the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista. It's actually the size of a typical golf course, about 155 acres. Thousands of Olympic and Paralympic hopefuls have trained here since it opened in the summer of 1995.
The training that I've been getting here at the training center is the best in the world. So having the best training in the world will make me the best in the world.
Blake Leeper is from Kingsport, Tennessee. At 22, he's been overcoming the odds most of his life. Born with a congenital birth defect, his lower limbs never develop below the knees. His motto for life? Find the ability in your disability.
The doctors told my father that I would never walk, I would never run, I would never play sports, I would be in a wheelchair all my life.
Leeper never took no for an answer, and as a double-leg amputee already holds the U.S. Paralympic records in the 100 and 200-meter sprints.
The energy return on the legs are amazing. I gain energy as I run and as my race prolongs. So there's some good and some bad to the situation, but the fact that I'm out here just running is a blessing for me.
San Diego's warm weather makes this year-round training site perfect for almost any Olympic sport. Kayakers and rowers train on Otay Lake Reservoir right next to the facility. And participants in the newest Olympic event, BMX dirt bike racing, train exclusively here for the London Games.
It's kind of like the BMX mecca of the U.S.
21-year-old Amanda Carr is from Punta Gorda, Florida. She started racing at age 5.
When it comes to the race, there's 8 in the gate at once, and there's no lanes. So it's who's going to get from the gate to the finish line first.
BMX initially got its start in California in the 1970s when teenagers would imitate their motocross heroes doing tricks and stunts on their dirt bikes. Is this more of a mental game or a physical game?
I would say, obviously the physical component needs to be there, but at this level, all of us are physically fit to win a race. I believe it comes down to mentals.
The athletes that train here are not the big professionals that you see. That's why they need a training center. They're not making huge salaries. They're not the professional basketball players. These guys that do it because they have a passion for sport.
Tracy Lamb is director of the Olympic Training Center. It's run on public and private donations of about $7 million a year. He says despite the sluggish economy, business is good.
We're the only country in the world that funds its Olympic program through private donations of the American people. And it's a tough way to do business, but I think it's a great way to do business.
This sprawling complex hosts sports ranging from tennis and soccer to archery and women's field hockey. But take a tour, and you'll notice only 50% of the facility is being used. Lamb says it's by design.
So we don't know what sport's going to be in the future, so we have some potential for growth. The athletes are here to reach their full potential, and we're still striving as a training center here in Chula Vista to still have growth.
The archery, soccer, and women's field hockey teams have qualified for London, along with 19 members from track and field, including Paralympic sprinter Blake Leeper.
So right now I'm the top dog in the U.S., but I'm ranked 2nd in the world in my events, and there's this one particular guy, he's really good.
That would be Oscar Pistorius from South Africa, the first double-leg amputee to qualify for both the Olympic and Paralympic Games.
So he'll have some hype going into it. I raced him a couple times. He's beaten me, yeah. But I know that the training that I've been getting here at the training center is the best in the world. And come the Paralympic Games, I'm gonna be ready for him. So he better be ready for me.
Unfortunately, BMX racer Amanda Carr didn't qualify during the Olympic trials. The Summer Games start July 27th in London, and the Paralympics begin 2 weeks after the close of the Olympic Games in London. San Diego's largest annual convention, Comic-Con, starts Wednesday night with a preview and runs through Sunday. Peggy gets a jump on what to expect this year over at the Round Table.
Attendance at the pop culture convention has skyrocketed in the past decade, and it's now capped at about 125,000 visitors. To talk about what we can expect at Comic-Con this year is KPBS arts reporter and author of the blog Cinema Junkie, Beth Accomando, and David Glasner, the public relations director for Comic-Con. And I'll bet the both of you have been waiting for this day since last
It's been 365 days.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to start with you, David. So sure. Some purists may be saying that Comic-Con has gone Hollywood. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think people who actually have been there since the very beginning know that film has always been an integral part of Comic-Con. When we started in 1970, we highlighted comic books, film, and fantasy literature. I think Comic-Con, Hollywood has kind of discovered Comic-Con in the last 10 years or so and start to send a lot of their A-list talent. But film has always been a really important part of our event.
Yeah, so maybe Hollywood has gone Comic-Con, as you said.
I think so.
But something that people don't know, and Beth told me this, is that you're a nonprofit organization.
We are. We're nonprofit educational. And in fact, I think most people are aware of Comic-Con because of the costume characters, people who are on the floor, all those big booths and all that. But we take up 2 floors of meeting space at the convention center, as well as meeting space at area hotels with panels, seminars, workshops in all areas of pop culture, breaking into comic book business, some life drawing classes, real hands-on workshops for filmmakers. It's really an educational experience. Not as dynamic as the floor maybe, but just as interesting, if not more so.
And a big part of it. So Beth, I have to ask you, you've been attending Comic-Con since its beginnings. Since
Not quite birth, the first one, but early
decades on. For sure,
yes.
I have to say that. Why does it appeal to you personally?
I love it because I can find people who share interests with me. I'm obsessed with pop culture. I love it. I think pop culture tells us a lot about ourselves, about where we've been, where we're going to, what we're afraid of, what our anxieties are. And it's fun to be able to go someplace where you're around all these people who feel the same way.
It is fun. I was going to say, what would you say to people who say, oh, all these, crazy people in costumes? You do think, though, that pop culture is important to the culture of San Diego.
Oh, yes. And I mean, for one thing, it's the only place I feel normal is going down there. But no, I think it's important. I mean, I think film, television, comics, these are all art forms, and they need to be celebrated, and they need to be preserved, and they need to be appreciated.
So there's the cultural side of it and the educational side of it. What about the financial side? I've heard both sides of the story. I've heard it doesn't really impact San Diego, but does it?
I think it does. We've never really looked at that aspect because our focus really is on putting together a pretty good event. But the convention center has, and I think the economic impact is pretty impressive, especially since it happens over a course of about 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, so we're looking at so this came from the convention center, and they said $180 million overall, direct attendance $75 million, tax revenue $2.6 million, and hotel rooms spending $126,000 on hotel rooms. Does this seem about right to you?
It does. It may even be conservative, and the reason being is I think that survey didn't take into account a lot of the things that some of the studios do, which is building wraps, renting out public parks to do activations, things of that nature. And the hotels, I think, are reflective of the hotels that we actually have room blocks in, which is about 60 hotels or so. And yet there are people who stay in hotels outside of our room blocks as far away as La Mesa and even Oceanside and farther up north. So the impact could be much greater.
What do you think is the major misconception about Comic-Con?
I think that it really is a bunch of kids who dress up in costume and are just having a good time, which is not a bad thing, but there's really so much more. There's a lot of business that actually is conducted during these 4 days. And also the educational aspect. People don't realize that there is really an educational component behind it all.
Absolutely. And what about you? What would you say would be a major misconception about it?
Well, I think people don't realize how much goes on there. There's like over 500 hours of programming going on. There's a film festival that I don't think that many people attend. So there's a lot that I think people tend to get focused on, that Hall H and the Hollywood stars, but there's so much more than that.
And we can expect to see a lot of those stories coming up next week?
Yep.
From you. Yes. All right, David Glanzer and Beth Accomando, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Well, the Zombies are coming to Petco Park. No, it's not a new Major League franchise. It's part of Comic-Con, of course. Today, workers got started on a zombie apocalypse obstacle course. Starting Thursday, the ballpark will be infested with over 1,000 zombies, all trying to infect those trying to climb, crawl, hide, and slide their way to safety.
You know, we always thought that obstacle racing had a lot of elements of the apocalypse. When we reached out to the guys at The Walking Dead, it seemed like a natural fit, and they've been a huge supporter, and this is going to be a pretty interesting combination.
The apocalypse runs through Saturday and is open to the public. Tickets are on sale now for $75 for participants and $15 for spectators.
Tonight in the public square, San Diego's Tea Party Coalition protested the Affordable Care Act on Saturday morning. Demonstrators called the law the largest tax increase in history on the middle class. Congressman Brian Bilbray joined more than 200 Tea Party demonstrators at the county administration building. Bilbray criticized the Affordable Care Act's name for being misleading.
The price of this act is twice of what was projected, and the revenue for it is half of what was promised.
Later, Bilbray praised parts of the Health Care Act, including the provision that allows those under age 26 to stay on their parents' insurance. He never directly talked about a repeal, but he received applause after saying the future of the health care law is in the hands of the people.
I think in November we're going to see the voters drag the leaders of this issue forward and say, you didn't do it the way you promised. It's not affordable.
Just a handful of counter-protesters in support of the Affordable Care Act were at the rally. You can weigh in on this conversation by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, or just email us at publicsquare@kpbs.org.
The debate over the Plaza de Panama project in Balboa Park has stretched into the evening at the City Administration Building. We go back to Katie Orr in the KPBS News Center for an update. What's happening now, Katie?
Well, Dwayne, the public is still testifying, voicing their support and opposition to the Plaza de Panama plan. Once this public testimony wraps up, the council will comment on it, and they are still expected to take a vote on it this evening.
And I guess the last quick question is, why do you think this issue is stirring so much passion?
Well, Dwayne, Balboa Park plays a big role in the lives of many San Diegans. People go there to walk, run, ride their bike, go see plays, go have dinner. People live near there. And this project would really alter how the park works and how people function within the park. There's a lot at stake. People feel connected to it, and this is a big project. So I think that it's just something that stirs up a lot of emotions in people, and they're very passionate about it, and this is their chance to make those passions known to the City Council, and they are certainly doing that tonight.
KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr. Of course, we will have more on this story on Morning Edition on KPBS FM and right here on Evening Edition tomorrow night. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.